I was thinking use that.
All right, let's share a little bit about what you came up with here. I think all of the sources of data that you're looking at are legitimate sources, but everything has pluses and minuses that you're talking about. Sassy, I'm sorry I didn't introduce you at the beginning, and I should have.
Oh, that's okay.
Would you introduce yourself to the group and tell them a little bit about what you do at Sugar Ridge? I mean, I know that you've met everybody in
Some
Sugar
of
Ridge.
them,
but most of
yeah,
them.
I feel like it. It may be longer than others for when I've seen some of you. My name is Anthony Longbrae, and I'm an instructor here at the university. I've been here going on 9 years, and I teach a bunch of different courses. A lot of you may know me from the intro course that I teach. For some of you, that may be the only course that you have had with me. For others, you may have also had the Ed Psych course with me. Lucky you, just kidding. I'm sorry. And then this semester, I'm teaching the General Methods course for the first time, and it's been awesome. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's been a great experience. I've taught some other different courses, the Introduction to Teaching Social Studies course, and I've actually taught methods before as well, the AYA Social Studies methods, which we've had that with any of you.
Right.
So, but it's just been great to be here. So, and I was telling Dan actually that a lot of this is somewhat familiar to me because I just graduated over the summer with my degree in mental health counseling, and it had a research methods and education course, which is a lot of this. So hopefully that'll help. I'm working with Felicia and Jen. It could hurt. So it's been really great. So I'm glad to be here.
Good, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, definitely.
So should we do a study on Ed Psych professors and their effectiveness in now? All right. So let's go around the room a little bit, see what you came up with. No particular order, but who had the survey questionnaire? All right. So talk to us a little bit about what you talked about.
For pros, we talked about how it's convenient and you can get personal opinions. But for cons, we said that you can get the bias, like what we talked about, and also you can get skewed results because someone could just go through and select one for everything instead of mess up the results.
I think with the survey, you can't probe more questions. You can't get maybe the answer that you're looking for or get them to elaborate more. You just get whatever they write down. So.
Good. Did you ever do one of those Survey Monkey surveys where it's like you got to choose this, this, or this, and none of them really fit you, and you don't know what to do with it? Like, do I leave that blank? What I really want to tell them is this, but I have no way to be able to tell them this, and so it's very restricting. I would suspect that maybe one good thing also about surveys or questionnaires is they're pretty quick and easy to do. You know, especially if you do them online, you can set it up at SurveyMonkey or something that somebody can click through pretty quickly and answer them. But it definitely has its share of limitations. Okay. All right. Good. What about an attitude and beliefs survey? What was that? Okay. What did you guys come up with?
For the pros, we just said that it's really easy to categorize your data. Like, you're asking specific,
Qualitative.
Yeah, qualitative questions, but you're getting quantitative, results out of it. So it's really easy to categorize your data that way.
Should we talk?
Sure.
It's also nice because I think it's fairly easy for people to do. Like, for most people, it's like, do you like this or this? And you give them a scale, and it's fairly easy for them to pick out where they are in that scale. Because most people have gut reactions to statements. But the data can be skewed because if somebody just had a really negative or a really positive experience with something, they might go higher or lower than overall they would actually feel. You can't get explanations for why they feel certain ways. So if there's somebody who is just that one person in that class who really likes to read and everybody else I know, you might want to explore more why that person really likes to read, but you'd have to go through something else to do that. And also it can be hard to make sure you're asking questions in ways that are getting the question across that you want to get across. Because especially, do you not like to do this fun thing? Or accidentally saying something that's this really awesome thing, do you not like it? So you can kind of accidentally be biased in the questions that you're asking.
Yeah, it's hard to remain unbiased, and so as a result, sometimes when we do attitudes and belief type of surveys, we like to use surveys that were already developed and already tested by somebody. You know, so I would encourage you to do that kind of thing. If you're looking at giving a survey to your students, you may want to look at who has already developed a survey that does the same kind of thing that you're trying to do with your students. If you want to know, for example, what their beliefs are about learning science, people have already created surveys about beliefs about science. Don't invent your own. Do a search, find examples of ones that have already been tried, tested, and have some research behind them, and use that same survey. Or sometimes people look it up and they tweak it a little bit, change a few questions, delete something, whatever, but you're working off of an instrument that has already been created by somebody else, rather than starting from scratch. Alexa?
Another thing about the attitudes and belief surveys is a lot of times, especially with like students, they're trying to guess what answers you want from them.
Yeah.
So it can be really hard to like set up a survey or an attitude and belief survey where they can't tell what answer you want. So they're actually giving their honest answer. Because I know, like, even in Res Life, like, when I push my residents to fill out their RA evaluation, they're like, yeah, I already gave you all 4s. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted. Like, I want your honest opinion. But they're like, I gave you all 4s because that makes you look good. I'm like,
Yeah,
so people
appreciate you making me look good, but I'd like to know how to improve, right?
Right, so you have to, like, try to make sure that your survey doesn't tell them they can't figure out what answers you're looking for.
That's right. So have you heard of the halo effect?
We talked about it.
Okay, so the halo effect, yeah, we did talk about it a little bit. So the halo effect is if you were through that program and you think that the program had a positive impact on you, then you're going to respond accordingly on that survey. So a classic example of that is whenever we do sort of these year-long professional development workshops. So Dr. Bostic and Dr. Matney and I work together on these all the time. And we work with a group of teachers all year long. And at the end of the year, they fill out surveys about their beliefs of what they should be doing in the classroom. And they tend to respond very positively. You know, that I should be the guide on the site, I should be using lots of technology, I should be doing lots of hands-on things. They say all the right things. But the fact is, part of the research that I do in these projects is I go out into the schools and I videotape what the teachers are doing. And I can tell you that, not 9 times out of 10, but about 7 out of 10, what they told you on the survey and what's actually going on in the classroom are not the same thing. They're telling you, I really believe it's important for students to use technology and do hands-on every day. And you go into their classroom and observe them 3 days in a row and there's no technology and no hands-on going on there. And you realize they may have that belief that that's what good teachers do, but the fact is, they're not doing it. And you don't know that unless you actually walk into the classroom and look at it. So there's kind of that possible, bias that comes to play in it. There's a place for the survey, and like you guys said, I think it's sometimes easy to create and fill out, but then we wonder how valid the results really are. What about individual interviews with people?
So the first thing that we said for pros was that you'll get a lot of information out of the students. We said that you could get multiple viewpoints because, like getting multiple student interviews, you would get like the people that like math and the people that don't, and like you could get multiple viewpoints of the same like class and same teacher. We also said that you can get like different kind of information, so you get verbal information from what they're saying, but also like nonverbal cues. Like, so if they're saying they really like it, but they're like introverted, they might not actually like it. And then you would be able to ask other questions, like if they don't give you the answer you're looking for, you can ask them to elaborate or ask a follow-up question.
And then for the cons, like we said that you could get a lot of information that's like a pro, but sometimes you get too much information and that's like off track. That's not like helpful to your service or helpful to your research. And you can't really like do 45-minute interviews with 30 kids per class. So while you can get multiple interviews by doing lots of different ones, it's time consuming, blah blah blah. And then a lot of the times if you're interviewing students, like the students aren't experts, so they bring their own bias in. And yeah, so like student opinions may not always be the best. And also you have to get permission from the parents because a lot of them will be under 18. And finally, you don't get like quantitative data, and a lot of people like want numbers when they are like reading reviews.
Good. Who mentioned earlier that you can't probe your students? Was that you guys? I can't remember who said that. Yeah. So that's what you guys had come up with, that whole idea when you're doing a survey, you can't probe any deeper. right? And that's the nice thing about an interview. Interviews are really good things in a lot of ways. When that student says to you, I hate math. Why do you hate it? Well, because it's so hard. What's hard about math? You know, I know what questions to ask because I'm going to play on whatever it is they say to me, and I can just keep going deeper. You know, if all the survey asks is, do you like math, yes or no, we're on a scale of 1 to 5, that doesn't really tell you anything. I mean, I got to go deeper than that. And sometimes the survey just doesn't go any deeper, and the interview will allow you to take you to a place that you can't get to. But because of that, as Maggie said, it can be really time-consuming too. So if I got 30 kids in a class, and I want to interview each one of them, heck, even if I only give each one of them 15 minutes or 10 minutes, it's going to take me 5, 6, 7 hours to do that interviewing. I can give them a survey in 15 minutes, collectively, and be done with it. So how much time do I really have to do the interviewing? And of course, the way that researchers get around that a lot of times is by sampling, right? And saying, I'm not going to talk to all 30 of my students. I'm just going to draw 5 names out of a hat and talk to each of those kids for 10 minutes, and within an hour, I'll get 5 interviews in, and I'll at least get a pulse of where the class is at. And you know what? That's what good teachers do every day anyway. If you have students working in small groups, and they're working on some kind of a problem, maybe they're trying to do some science experiment, and you can just walk over and say, so Stephanie, tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing. And Stephanie tells me a little bit, and I ask her a few questions. I'm having an interview with Stephanie. Her interview represents the entire table. She's kind of telling me about what her table is doing. And then I'm going to move on to the other table, and I'm going to say, you know, tell me a little bit more about what you're doing, Sarah. And so as I go around the room, if I spend 3 or 4 minutes with one person at each of the tables, then within 15 minutes, I can be all the way around the room and have interviewed 4 people. Gives me a good pulse of what's going on in the classroom. I don't have to talk to all 25 of you or 20 of you. I can talk to 3 or 4 people to get an idea of what's going on. That's what good teachers do when they do individual interviews with their students. Okay? But when it comes to doing more formal research, it may be that 3 or 4 is not enough. And how do we get enough data to draw conclusions? What about group interviews or focus groups? Who was our?
That's kind of funny. All of their pros are like our con, vice versa. Because group interviews are good because they aren't as time consuming. Because if you have a group of students and then one interviewer, then you're not doing individual work, so it's less time consuming. But then, because of that, because you have multiple people within a group, you're not going to get as specific, you're not going to get as much data as you want. There's always going to be like that natural born leader in the group. So there's always going to be that one person who talks all the time, and then there's going to be the people that sit back. You kind of mentioned going along.
Like, if you're in a group and one person says something, a lot of students might just say the same thing instead of like voicing their own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can also have, a good thing about group interviews, you can also have like different people bouncing off of each other, bouncing ideas off of each other. Like I could say something and then Serena, bounces off of it, and then Larissa says something, so.
So you had more or less the reverse of what they had for the individual interviews, because you overcome the time consuming, but you don't get the individual
You don't get as much as data as you
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right on both concepts, and I think that whole idea of bouncing an idea off is kind of cool. Have you been part of a group interview or a focus group before? Have you ever done that? I mean, it's kind of a good thing that, you got this group of people sitting at the table, and one person says, well, I like it when you do such and such, and somebody else can say, I never thought about that. You're right, I do like that. And like if I asked you individually, you never would have thought of it, but now that somebody else brought it up, now that you mention it, yeah, I remember that class, or I remember doing that. And sometimes it takes somebody else to sort of spark that, and it would never come up in your individual interview. But then you've got that one person at the table that just doesn't really have much of anything to say, and everybody else dominates, and if I had talked to that person individually, I may have been able to get a perspective that I lose out on. But a group interview is certainly one way you can do it in terms of collecting data in your classroom and doing a study. You can say, okay, I've got 28 students in the class, and instead of interviewing 28 of them individually, I'm going to create 7 groups of 4 and talk to each group for 10 minutes. Within an hour and a half, I can talk to everybody. I'm just not going to be able to do it individually. It's maybe a compromise. And not only a compromise, but it has its benefits too. So some people choose to do kind of a test and retest process to collect their data. Who is our test and retest group? Okay, what you guys think?